Living in the end. Are you guys actually really familiar as to what this really means? What does this entail? Are you a bit confused about it? Have you been trying to live in the end in the way that you think is the correct way to do it? But at the same time, especially when it comes to manifesting an SP, say your end scene is marriage or something like that, are you able to live in that end goal? Or are you also a little bit tempted to manifest little things in the middle, like a text message here and there, just that you feel like something is happening? Is that the right thing to do as well? Well, I'm going to share all in this video. First up, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Athena Raven. I'm a mental health and manifestation life coach, and I'm here to empower you on your manifestation journey. Please do like and subscribe to the content. It really helps this channel to grow. And I do offer one-on-one coaching as well if you'd had some specific requirements that you really wanted to delve into with me. So my email is in the description below. Thank you for joining me. Now, living in the end, why is that so important? Let's discuss that first up. So you've heard about Neville Goddard talking about the end state, living in the end, and there is sometimes a bit of confusion with regards to what that end scene should look like. For example, you're manifesting an SP, so your end goal, for some people it's like, oh, getting married, our wedding day, or we've just moved into our new house together, or they're asking me out again, they're asking me out on a date. But is that really the end goal? In fact, your end scene should be perhaps a day or a few days after that big event or something like that. So for example, if your end goal was, I want to be married with them, living together, then your end scene will probably be something like, I'm so grateful that we're married. You're twiddling about with your wedding ring, and or maybe you're saying to your partner, I'm happy anniversary, I'm so grateful that we're together, and hearing your partner saying the same thing back to you. You're not going to have your end scene as the wedding day. You're going to have it a little bit afterwards. There's a couple of reasons for that as well. Like if you, for example, your end goal is the wedding day itself, it's going to evoke a lot of emotions. What you'll probably find as well is that, you're doing these visuals when you're in the state akin to sleep. And when you're in that state, you're in a sort of almost self-hypnotic state. You're in between wakefulness and sleepiness, and, you're about to doze off, but you've still got some control of your mind, of your thoughts, of your visuals. And that's when you can really imprint the unconscious mind by visualizing in as much detail as possible, with as much sensory vividness, in first person as well. So you're in the scene, you are living the scene, you can see your hands, you can touch, you can feel, you can taste, you can smell, you can do everything. You are in the scene. You're not detached from it, watching it as though you're watching a movie. You are actually living it out as though you're living out one of your old memories. And you don't want to evoke too much emotion in the scene where you're like, wedding day, so excited as well, because then a lot of people would struggle with falling asleep afterwards. This is something where you want to feel content, like this feels good, this feels done, it is a given. And then you're able to fall asleep and drift off after you've looped it around in your mind. You're looping it around like you're looping like those GIF files that you see, that just go on this little loop. And all you need is a scene that is 3 to 5 minutes in length, if that, nothing too heavy, so that it's easy to loop around, so that you've got a snippet, a snapshot in your mind, easier to absorb. It's not exhausting as well. It's not like you're playing out an entire scene that has all these characters and all these elaborate details to it. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I'm focusing and concentrating too much on something like that, it just gets overwhelming, and I find that I actually can't fall asleep. So if you've got something really simple, even if it is just auditorily, you're hearing a voice in the scene, you can absorb it. You can just be like, okay, you hear someone congratulating you and you say thank you, or you're hearing your SP saying, happy anniversary, darling. You're saying the same thing back as well, happy anniversary, I'm so glad that we're married and we're together. So that's the scene that you want it to be maybe celebrating an anniversary rather than the actual wedding day. That also means that there's no room for movement. There's no room for any sort of errors as well, or anything else happening before that scene takes place. If the marriage has taken place, you are happy, you content. And also with that, there is a sense of naturalness to it too. So you're not evoking like loads and loads of emotions where it's overwhelming. You're keeping the scene short enough. And you are, evoking a calm, content feeling, and you're repeating this until it just feels natural. It feels normal. It feels as real to you as when you're thinking back to an old memory of when you were at the beach or something. That just feels natural, normal. It has been absorbed, it is a part of your life. And that's what you want with your end scene. And then living in the end going forward is going to be as well, embracing that end scene, revisiting it and feeling it in your day-to-day life as well. You're not thinking of your SP as the day progresses. You are thinking from being with them, having that desire fulfilled and satiated. And so that's why it's so important to live in the end and to pick your end scene, whereby it's not the day of that desire happening. It is a few days afterwards, say, even with a job as well. You're not dreaming, or you're not visualizing them saying to you, congratulations, you got the job, whilst you're at the interview. You are visualizing a few days later where you are just like, I'm loving my new job. I'm so happy that I got this promotion or this new career, and you're feeling content in it and you're feeling fulfilled and feeling good. And there's no room for error as well. There's not room for, okay, you get the job and then the next day it gets cancelled on you or something like that. It's just, it evokes the right kind of emotions that you need. So keep that in mind when you're doing your in the end scene. Now, for a lot of people, I know there's like an impatience factor. And of course, naturally, we've been programmed to try and control our world through the outside. Something isn't working in the 3D. Your SP has left you, has broken up with you. And you're like, I've got to control this situation by reaching out to them and calling them and texting them and begging them and pleading with them to stay. There's a third party involved. Well, I've got to look at their social media, check out the competition. I've got to contact this third party and tell them to keep away, keep away from my partner. I've got to do this. And you just feel like you have to micromanage. I've got to send them a message explaining what all the wrongdoings that I did and apologizing for it, and, trying to get them to forgive me, trying to get them to come back. And as a lot of you would have experienced, this is met with a lot of resistance and anguish, and it just serves to push things further away from you. We have to trust in the process and the end goal. And of course, because there's so much angst, when you've gone from a state of, we've had a really bad breakup and I'm blocked now, and there's a third party and there's distance and whatever other obstacles you want to add in the way, to imagine a scene where you are married and you are celebrating your anniversary is probably going to feel quite daunting. And you're probably going to be thinking all the time, well, that is going to take possibly years to manifest, right? By the time the unblocking has been done, by the time we get back together, by the time we actually get to the state of marriage. Now, that's not necessarily the case. You don't know how long it's going to take. We don't have control over how long this stuff takes or how it happens, how it comes to fruition. We just have to trust in the process and know that we've imprinted our unconscious mind with the end result. And I know for a lot of people, when they're getting angsty and they want to micromanage, they also want to micromanage the manifesting process. And it's like, okay, so I've implanted that end scene, but I also want to maybe do a manifestation for a text in the meantime. I want to manifest a text in the meantime, because then I know that it's working, because then I know that I'll receive that text and I'll probably receive it sooner. And, I just want to move things along. But what you're essentially doing in a situation like that is causing a sort of breakdown of the end result ever coming to fruition. Now, if you do cause a breakdown of it, of course, you can absolutely rectify it. Like I said before in a previous video, there's absolutely nothing that you can do that would ever stop your manifestation from ever being able to come to fruition. Nothing. You can't ruin a situation, or it can't be so dire and so impossible that it can't be brought to fruition. But at the same time, you don't want to mess with the process, because you're just all the time delaying it, pushing things away, causing a miscarriage of, the end scene, that anniversary scene. And instead, you'll just manifest that text, and then everything will peter off afterwards, potentially. So it's something to keep in mind. Think of it this way. When you've got an end scene, imagine that you've got a little plant pot. This is what it's all about. You've got a little plant pot, and you've got your end scene with your SP and, happy anniversary, darling, whatever your scene is, right? So you've planted the seed in. What do? You leave it and you let that seed grow. You might nourish it, you might water it with occasional, okay, come back to the imaginal act and, refresh my unconscious mind with the imaginal act, feel what it feels like to have that end result, and that will water it. But at the same time, you don't want to do it obsessively, so you're overwatering it and saturating it and drowning it. It's just enough. It's just a top up here and there, because once you've impressed the unconscious mind, you don't have to keep doing it. You don't have to think about it again. But occasionally, if you're triggered by the 3D world, you feel that there's a bit more you need to do, you can go back, revisit it, just water that plant. Now, when in the meantime you're wanting to manifest a text, and say you're just like, I can't wait for that end result, I want to manifest a text in the meantime. So what you're essentially doing is you've got your plant pot with your seeds in it with the end goal. You've just planted another seed of a completely different flower. So you've got your roses planted in here, and you've planted some sort of an olive tree or something like that, for example. Now what's going to happen, you're going to have the two things trying to grow from this tiny pot, and one is going to end up stifling and destroying the other, essentially, especially if you're planting numerous different seeds. Okay, I manifested a text, I'm going to manifest another text, and I'm going to manifest a phone call as well. And you're just planting all these seeds, killing off the other ones as well, and it just ends up becoming a mess. You just want to have that end goal in mind. Now for some people, their end goal is to receive that text, or they feel that, well, you know what, if I receive that text where they tell me they love me, then there's only one way that it could go, right? Wrong. And I'll talk from my own experience. Like I say, I've been studying Neville Goddard's work for, well, it's been almost 20 years since I've discovered it, and I've been doing coaching for quite a few years now. And I've seen and experienced so many things, not only myself, but stories that clients have given me and their experiences too. And for me, this one time, there was this guy that I met. It was a sort of whirlwind romance, within 5 months. We'd really, really come together quite strongly. And of course, my innocent insecurities at that time kicked in. I started to get a bit needy, a bit clingy. He started to reflect this. He started to move away from me. And suddenly I was being blocked and ignored. I was, really upset at the time. And I thought, well, you know what, I'll manifest a message. He was very... what's the word? He'd be very standoffish with his feelings. Not really the kind of guy to ever say, I love you or anything like that. He'd kind of allude to it, but he'd never really be able to say it. And a bit, like not giving too much affection in his messages. But you know what? I visualized, I saw that text message. I felt my phone vibrating and I saw it. I miss you, with 4 kisses. I was very specific in my visual, with 4 kisses saying I miss you. And I also was visualizing that he was saying the words I love you to me. Now, it took me 5 weeks to manifest him back into my life. So not too long, essentially, after I'd gotten over the initial devastation, which took me about 2.5 weeks, I was able to drop the desire, go into the state of the wish fulfilled. I've been doing my imaginal acts, and I let it go, let it come to me. And it did in the most fascinating way as well. And eventually, probably like a day or two after we had rekindled contact, there was that text message, I miss you, with the 4 kisses. And a few days later we were talking, he'd started to say, I love you. And it was bizarre because it was so out of character for him as well to start hearing him letting his guard down and actually saying those words. Now you think, well, this is fantastic. This has got to be working out, right? But that was my manifestation. I had only gone as far as hearing the message and hearing those words, seeing the message and hearing those words. And I got it as I had envisaged, as I had believed. And I let it go and I let it come to me. But then eventually it just sort of petered out to nothingness. It was really, really odd. It was like, it all seemed so good. It all seemed great. He had really missed me. Those 5 weeks of separation, he was talking about having regrets, all my assumptions that he was missing me. He was thinking about me, he was reflecting it back. But literally, it just sort of petered off after a while to nothing. And at the time, I didn't really care, to be honest, because I had done a bit of self-growth, self-work, and I started to see him differently anyway. So I wasn't too bothered at the time. But had it been someone that I was really loved and wanted a future with, I would have been devastated. I'd been like, what the hell's happening? Start again from scratch. Start again with the visuals, but this time go to the end and really envisage the end. So this is why we say about go to the end, go just a few days after your end scene if you want to. Go that little bit further so that it feels natural and there's no room for movement. The bridge of incidents will occur, and it's not necessarily a smooth bridge as well. It's not like it's always an upward trajectory to that time where they ask you out and it's all great. You might have a couple of bumps in the road, like they contact you and then they block you again, or they contact you but then you argue again. But that is all going towards your end result. As long as you are staying true to that end result and you believe in it, you have faith in it, you've impressed your unconscious mind with that end scene, that is what is going to manifest. But if you start trying to micromanage the process and planting all these other seeds in your pot, you don't know what you're planting, you're just killing off all the other seeds and ruining your manifestation potentially. So I hope this was helpful. I'd be interested to know what your experiences have been on this, and I hope that this helped you out with this whole importance of why it's so vital, that end scene is so important, and why living in the end is always being stressed by all these coaches that you see. So I really hope this was clear. Please do hit the bell icon so you never miss a beat, and sending you all the love in the world. Thank you for joining me.